pushing for the removal of the recently implemented restrictions on international students. Good evening and thank you for joining us. The City of Thunder Bay will lobby the federal government to eliminate its cap on foreign students.
That decision came at last night's City Council meeting, despite some concern that it could worsen the housing crisis. Vasilios Bellos was at that meeting, and Vasilios, that wasn't the only big item on the agenda. An expensive purchase for Thunder Bay Fire Rescue also went ahead. That's right, Riley. Council approved the tender for a new pumper truck expected to be operating in the city next year. The price tag? Over $1.4 million. That's about a 30% jump compared to what a fire truck like that cost just a few years ago. Agreement that international students will play a crucial role in the growth of Thunder Bay and fill much-needed employment opportunities. City Council voted to lobby for the elimination of the federal government's international student cap, though that decision came after discussions regarding negative impacts.
7, 8, 10 people living in homes, and I get the complaints from the neighbors often.
Some around the table, like Councillor Brian Hamilton, feared continuing to bring students in would only worsen the city's already severe housing crisis. Addressing the housing shortage was the goal of the federal government's 2-year foreign student cap. Hamilton did vote to lobby the feds, but wanted ways to alleviate these challenges.
Parallel infrastructure that actually, at least matches the immigration targets.
We don't have the housing right now. You can bring in so many people, but where are they going to stay? I mean, are we going to have more people staying, having to stay in tents, or I don't know, tent cities? I mean, what are we going to have?
Also during the meeting, a tender approval for a new Thunder Bay Fire Rescue truck. That came in at $1.4 million, which sounded the alarm for some councillors.
I was struck because I've been around for a while that this truck is costing us a lot more than it has in the past.
That included Councillor Andrew Folds, who, despite the price tag, approved the tender, acknowledging the need for the truck. Acting Fire Chief Dave Paxton explained Fire Rescue is not immune to the rising costs seen in the auto industry, estimating a 30% price jump in just the last 4 years.
COVID, staffing, computer chips, all those have factored in, and emissions as well. To give an example, the engine package that will be on this truck is roughly an extra $100,000 compared to the previous.
The new pumper is replacing a 21-year-old unit. Vasilios Bellos, TBT News.
Patterson Court residents are happy about new security patrols in their building, but they still want more measures to improve safety. Dozens of tenants rallied last week calling for safety improvements following a violent incident and concerns about drug trafficking inside the 10-story social housing complex. In response, the Thunder Bay District Social Services Board agreed to bring in a private security firm. DSAB officials say security staff will conduct patrols every evening and once after midnight. Tenant Secretary Linda Gamby says they'll push to extend those hours, but she's encouraged that their efforts have made a difference.
But the tenants that were out there, I've never seen them so passionate. I mean, they were just almost on the street holding the signs up, and people that I would never have guessed would have came downstairs.
That's the schedule that's currently in play for now. Obviously, if things need to be adjusted up or down, earlier, later, more or less, we would want to take that in consideration. But as a starting point, that's where we are with this property.
Gamby says she hopes to speak to DSAB officials soon to discuss the extension of those security hours.
Ontario Provincial Police in the Northwest dealt with more cases of impaired driving and violent crime last year, according to the service's annual report for 2023.
Regional Commander Brian McKillop sat down with TBT News to speak about the crime statistics as well as the OPP's top priorities for this year. Jessica Clement has the details.
OPP officers in the Northwest region were very busy last year as they made over 16,000 arrests and over 36,000 traffic stops, according to their annual report for 2023. Chief Superintendent Brian McKillop noted they saw an increase in property crimes, violent crimes, and fatal collisions, but a decrease in personal injury collisions and property damage collisions. He says what stood out to him the most was the increase in impaired driving occurrences, but increased enforcement may be part of the reason.
We led the entire province in proactive ride programs or Reduce Impaired Driving Everywhere programs throughout the festive season. So we saw a dramatic increase in impaired driving charges. So compared to 2022, where we saw 1,124 impaired driving charges across the region, we saw 1,176 across Northwest Region for 2023. It's a startling and alarming statistic that people are still out there engaged in that type of problematic driving behavior.
McKillop states last year they also saw an increase in violent crimes, specifically related to intimate partner violence. He says while the incidents are alarming on their own, the increase in reported incidents shows more trust in the OPP.
We've adopted some very proactive approach and put a lot of energy into making sure we support our victims and those that are survivors of intimate partner violence. So by putting more resources into that, by having our MCERT teams out there working with victims and really leaning on our victim support networks, we're really hoping that those that are suffering from domestic violence occurrences feel more comfortable coming forward.
McKillop says this year the Northwest detachments will be working hard to keep building connections in each community, adding that the OPP's top priorities for 2024 are crime resolution, providing support for victims, and offender compliance.
It's vitally important for the success of the criminal justice system to prevent re-victimization and to prevent further victims from occurring as a result of offenders going out there and becoming more prolific, that we hold them to account in a way that supports them through the criminal justice system so they don't re-offend.
Jessica Clement, TBT News.
Highway 17 near Dryden was closed for a few hours this afternoon due to snowy conditions and a multi-vehicle crash. According to the Oxdrift fire team, the noon-hour collision involved 5 transport trucks and 1 passenger vehicle. 2 people were taken to hospital with minor injuries. OPP remained on the scene while tow trucks removed the vehicles. According to the MTO's 511 map, the highway between Dryden and Vermilion Bay was closed as a precaution due to the snowy conditions, but it reopened around 3 p.m. Dryden OPP had also issued a warning on social media asking drivers to stay home and avoid unnecessary travel.
Hello everyone, it's Constable Dela Cruz with Dryden OPP. I'm here to advise everyone that the weather outside is indeed frightful. Those who have plans and are planning to go out on the road are advised to stay at home and go on another day unless it's urgent. The roads are currently slippery and the winds are currently continuously picking up. For highway conditions, please call 501. For emergency, please call 911 for assistance. And for further follow-ups, please follow opp.ca on any of our social media platforms.
There's more pressure on the Ford government over the judicial appointment process.
The Premier says he won't back down on the idea of former staffers sitting on the committee that makes the appointments. Siobhan Morris has the details.
There's no sign of the Premier backing off a pledge to appoint like-minded judges to further a tough-on-crime agenda.
I'm not going to double down, I'm tripling down now. We're going to triple down on making sure our communities are safe. We're going to triple down on getting judges that believe in throwing someone in jail when they kick the doors in.
Doug Ford's comments come after 2 of his former staffers were appointed to a panel that picks judges. The opposition pressed the Attorney General.
These statements are being widely condemned as disgraceful and dangerous, Speaker. Is he going to move forward on this, or will he show some integrity and condemn the Premier's comments?
Doug Downey insists the government picks panelists and backs off.
A quarter of that group are judges. So, Mr. Speaker, they do good work. We take their advice. And we don't meddle with them, Mr. Speaker, but Howard Hampton, the NDP Attorney General in 1992, did meddle with the committee.
Holding up a book about the former New Democratic government, a prop, that's a no-no in the House.
Put the book down.
Progressive Conservatives continue to face pushback over their post-secondary education funding plan. It's a package less than half what colleges and universities said was necessary.
$1.3 billion in new funding for post-secondary education. We are going to assure that students in this province have access and affordability in post-secondary education.
Extending a tuition freeze, but with no plan to make up for lost revenue as international student permits are cut in half. Siobhan Morris, CTV News.
The Ontario NDP also pressed the Ford government again today to give forest firefighters the same benefits as municipal fire crews. Yesterday, area MPPs joined union leaders who represent those who fight wildfires, calling for WSIB coverage and better compensation. Labour Minister David Piccini seemed to open the door to that idea today. That prompted local MPP Lise Vaugeois to ask for firm timelines.
So I'm glad that the minister has finally decided to come to the table, even if it is late. So we need to know exactly how and when the government intends to recognize wildland fire rangers as firefighters in legislation. Legislative recognition also means supplying them with the proper PPE so that these firefighters have a chance not to become sick in the first place.
You know, I want to thank my colleague, the Minister of Labour, for his comments that have been very clear about what our plans are for the future for our wildland forest fighters. Mr. Speaker, we continue to make investments not only in our forest firefighters but in communities all throughout Ontario to keep them safe. We are making investments to make sure that our firefighters have everything they need to do the job in this province.
Thunder Bay Police are issuing another warning about the so-called grandparent scam. They say the latest known local victim was bilked out of $3,000 in response to a phone call from a person claiming to be a lawyer representing the victim's grandson, who was said to have been involved in a car crash. The victim was asked to transfer the money for bail. Police urge people to talk to vulnerable friends and family members about the scam. The best way to avoid being victimized is to hang up the phone and try to reach the family member in question directly to verify the story.
A presentation on the complexities of searching for unmarked graves at residential schools highlighted the third day of Research and Innovation Week at Lakehead University. That came from LU anthropology professor Scott Hamilton. Hamilton's expertise goes back a decade. He first started as a researcher with the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. Today, with the permission of community leaders, he presented some recent findings from incomplete archival searches of residential schools. He spoke about the challenge of gathering hundreds of data fragments into one useful search tool to develop a more complete picture.
There's huge gaps, both in terms of mortality rates, but also what the places look like, how the places were used, how the space within those school grounds were utilized. And a lot of that other information comes from very diverse sources. Air photos from the National Archive, church records, geological survey reports, incidental family photographs, all kinds of other things that have to be hunted for, and in many, many different archives.
Research and Innovation Week continues tomorrow morning with a showcase of researchers in the LU Faculty Lounge.
Well, it was the perfect ending in a Southside neighborhood last night, as a cat that had been stuck on top of a hydro pole since Saturday was finally rescued. Synergy North workers came to the back lane near Alberta Street at around 9:15 yesterday evening. They used one of their bucket lifts to raise a worker to the top of the pole, who then grabbed the feline named DJ. Power was cut to around 190 hydro customers in the area to ensure the safety of the tabby and the crew members. A neighbor says now that DJ is safe and sound, she'll be taking him to the Humane Society shelter. Oh, that's good.
Oh, very glad that that story has a happy ending. I know there were a lot of concerned people
Absolutely.
yesterday when it came to light that cat had been up on that hydro pole for
so long,
several days. And Haley, you were actually the one who was out shooting that
Yes.
footage for us last night, pulling double duty now. It's a good thing that there was not the wind out there last night that we're experiencing right now.
Absolutely. Even I can say for myself, I was glad it was a mild night last night as I was eagerly awaiting DJ's return to the ground. And today even, we had a good high for the day at this time of year. It was a high of 0, feeling like -5 with the wind chill, but that came early this morning. That was around 10 a.m. And so yes, DJ wouldn't have wanted to be up there later today because we saw wind gusts in the northerly directions from 4 to 44 kilometers an hour, so very gusty at times. Our low is actually our current temperature, -13, feeling like -21 with the wind chill. So you can see the difference is quite significant as we progress throughout the day. And we went from mostly cloudy to progressively cloudy, and that cloudiness is going to turn into some snow, which we can take a look at as we look at our radar. We have a large system that's been moving through the western portion of our region throughout today, and it will be moving more easterly as we continue on throughout the evening. And so let's take a look at what that looks like right now in this region. So Red Lake is experiencing some snow still. It's been light snow to blowing snow throughout the day. They were at -20 to -21 for most of the day. They're at -18 right now, and they do have an extreme cold warning for tonight. And then areas have a few travel advisories as well, like Kenora and Sioux Lookout. As mentioned earlier in the newscast, there were a few road closures as well around the Dryden area. They have a snowfall warning there and in Fort Frances as well. Fort Frances and Atikokan are both at -12 right now. Armstrong -19, -20 in Pickle Lake. And then as we look over in areas like Greenstone, they're at -16, seeing snow over there as well. Now, as we move more southerly, we'll see that there's some springtime competition as some warmer areas do exist in the region. 7 right now in Wawa and 9 in Sault Ste. Marie. They actually saw a high of 11 today, so that's why they're seeing rain instead of snow right now. As we move on, though, we will see that tonight we will drop down to -21 in Thunder Bay, feeling like -31 with that wind chill. So that cold push is coming through. It will be cloudy. There's that 40% chance of snow or ice pellets depending, and there is definitely that risk of frostbite. So you'll definitely want to be bundling up tonight and maybe some cocoa. That's always what I recommend.
Haley, you're supposed to be hot weather, Haley. I don't know what to believe anymore.
The only thing hot tonight is the hot chocolate, Ryan.
The whole world is topsy-turvy, -31 with the wind chill. Okay, we will have to brace ourselves. Thanks a lot. All right, well, French President Emmanuel Macron raised some eyebrows when he recently suggested that NATO countries could put troops on the ground in Ukraine. The response from a number of other countries, though, including Canada, has been swift, saying that is not going to happen. We'll have details when your news hour continues right after the break.
Into Ukraine has rarely been discussed publicly, with NATO trying to avoid being dragged into a wider war with Russia.